Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name is Jaron Moore, and this session is going to be about making money worldwide, talking about shipping internationally. Just a little bit about myself. I've been selling on the platform for about 5 years now. Before this, I worked for the university in my hometown. And while going to school and, going through business school, I always, wanted to be in business, but I didn't know exactly what type of business I wanted to be in. And my grandmother, she's like an OG for thrifters. She would always have garage sales. She would go thrifting. And basically all the clothes that I had growing up were clothes that were thrifted. And so one day she mentioned to me that she wanted to put some clothes on eBay. And I was very, very confused about that because I didn't think eBay, you could put any clothes on there. I thought it was just books and maybe toys and stuff like that. But she told me about it, and so I ended up trying it out. And when I tried it out, it completely changed my life for the better. So my life has definitely changed since being on eBay. I love the platform, and I've just really been open to a lot of the changes that eBay has been wanting to bring about. And it's really helped my career and furthered me in this endeavor. And so I want you guys to be as open as possible today. Be as open to understanding and trying to make your business the best that it can possibly be. I launched out full-time in 2020. I had to convince my wife in order to do this. And one of the ways I was able to do that was by, putting together a nice presentation of how I can make money. And as a business major, it was important that I could find something that was sustainable and something that was going to work for us. And so I'm very passionate about just making money worldwide and shipping internationally, because that was something that I knew I needed to focus on if I was going to be able to create something that was sustainable. So in this presentation, we're going to be talking about my mindset about shipping internationally, the international sales that I've had, some of the mistakes that I've made, the international shipping options, the testimonials that I've been able to get from other sellers and other buyers, and then as well as some tips, and then I'll leave you guys with some takeaways. So I think it's important just for you guys to kind of understand some of my mindset in the very beginning. I knew I wanted to create a business that was going to be lasting. I didn't just want to be a hobby seller, especially if I was going to be jumping out full time. I needed something that was going to be concrete, something that, I could do for years to come, something I could depend on. And so I wanted growth and sustainability. I wanted to be able to reach more buyers, and I wanted to be able to make more money, right? Because I have a family. And so I just looked for any opportunity that I possibly could to do that. And so I was like, you know what? I can make money locally. That's great. I can make money within my state. That's great. I can make money in the US, but can I make money globally? And I'll begin to do some research and begin to try to figure out, okay, how can we do this global shipping thing? And so some of the questions that I had early on was, okay, hey, what happens if the package gets lost or damaged in transit? This is all things that I'm thinking about because I have a background in shipping from my previous job. I'm like, what happens if it gets lost? Like, I've never shipped anything internationally before. And then I'm not very knowledgeable about the international market, okay? I have no idea. I have no clue about the international market. And then on top of that, it was just very, very overwhelming. Okay, it was very, very overwhelming, and I didn't necessarily know how I was going to go about doing it. And so I always like to say that it pays to get the right advice, especially from those that have been there and done it. And so I can remember, at this time, trying to do a little bit of research and trying to get an understanding about the global market, about shipping internationally. And I found this woman's video on YouTube. Her name was Susan A. Wells. I believe her video is still out there. Wonderful video, but she did a full presentation just on the pros and cons of shipping internationally. And as I began to look at that, I opened myself up, as I mentioned before the presentation, that I had to be open, and I want you guys to be open too. So I opened myself up to her teachings and to what she was saying and how she was able to go about making money worldwide. And a lot of the questions that I had began to get answered in that moment. And so I'm like, okay, these are the places that I can ship to. These are the places that I probably shouldn't ship to. So basically, she put together a nice little outline. And I mean, I went verbatim to that, and it has definitely paid off for me. So guys, I'm gonna say it again. It pays to get the right advice, especially from those that have been there and done it. Okay, so talking about making money worldwide. So I've been shipping internationally for about 2 years. I told you that I launched out full time in 2020. And it's been absolutely amazing. You know, for those 2 years, initially I was struggling to get sales, struggling just to really, make the income that I wanted to make. And we'll talk about the global shipping program a little later on, but I was enrolled in the global shipping program and I just wasn't seeing a whole lot of traction. But, now it's gotten to the point where, I'm doing, sales every single week, an average of 5 to 10. And so things have just progressively gotten better and better throughout the years as I've gotten more research, as, I've figured out how to actually list better. Like, things have just gotten a whole lot better. And I'm making sales that I otherwise wouldn't have ever made. And so that's what I love about this global opportunity that's available to all of us resellers, okay? There's money on the table. Don't want to leave it, okay? We always want to try to be our very, very best, okay? And I would say that international sales represent about 10% of all of my sales yearly. So it's a big part of what I do. I always like to say I don't just want the money in my local area. I don't just want the money in Texas, which is where I'm from. I don't just want the money in the U.S. I want to get some money from some of these other countries as well. I think that's absolutely amazing. Okay, most of my orders are from Canada. If you're from Canada, I absolutely love you. I would love to have some more orders from Canada, but Canada, I say I probably get an order every week. At least once a week I'm getting an order from Canada just because they're neighboring to us. And so these guys order from us constantly. Easy to ship because I'm shipping out clothing, and so it's just a lot easier in order to get it to these customers. So let's look at some of the other places I've also shipped. So Australia, Brazil, the Czech Republic, France, Germany, Israel, Japan, Korea, Mexico, Russia, Spain, United Kingdom. I think my favorite place that I've shipped is Israel. Okay, and the reason why I say Israel is because my faith is important to me. So like just reading stories in the Bible about Israel and like that is really captivating for me. And there's a story about Ruth and a guy named Boaz. And I actually sold something to a guy named Boaz in Israel. So I'll never forget that. I absolutely love Israel. And coincidentally, I've had probably maybe 5 to 10 more orders since then from Israel. So it's just really cool to see how many places you get to have an impact once you begin to open yourself up globally and try to make that impact. Okay. So now, while shipping worldwide has been great, it also has come with some challenges too, especially early on, because you can get the advice and you can get the tips and stuff, but until you actually do it on your own, it can be a little bit difficult. And so once I finally began to do that, I noticed a mistake that I had made, and so I want to look at some of those mistakes. But the first mistake that I made, I had I think it was a Polo Ralph Lauren shirt, and I thought it was a men's shirt. When I shipped it out, the gentleman received it, and he messaged me and told me that it was a girl's shirt. And so I didn't really know what to do at that point because I didn't really want to argue him because I was pretty sure that it was a men's shirt. He was pretty sure that it was a women's shirt. And so he asked if he could return the item. Okay, so if he were to return the item, he would have to pay for the shipping. And so basically what I told him at that point, don't worry about returning it. I will refund you the money, and then you can go donate that item, discard that item, give it away, okay? But I just went ahead and assumed the responsibility and just went ahead and tacked it up to it being my mistake. And so what I want to get you to understand is that you have to be very, very accurate whenever you are doing your listings, okay? So if it's a men's shirt, make sure that it says men's shirt. If it's a women's shirt, make sure that it says women's shirt, because if it doesn't, and it goes to somebody internationally, then the stakes are a lot higher because they have to pay more in order for that item to get shipped back. So it's just a lot more economical for me to have him just keep that item and just not even worry about trying to return it to me. And then another mistake that I actually made, let's see here, was for a pair of Nike shoes. And at this time, I was just in haste trying to get up as many listings as I possibly could, and I would not advise that. But in doing so, at the very bottom, whenever you can put your weight, your dimensions, like I would never put the accurate weight in there, because at that time it just didn't really dawn on me to really focus on the international customer. I didn't realize that shipping weight really mattered. And so I didn't put it in. Maybe like it defaulted to like 1 pound. But whenever I went to go ship the item, because it's probably like a $60 shoe, okay? And so the item increased in price probably about $40. Almost fell out because there was no way I was going to be able to ship this item, especially just starting out, with an additional $40. And so I had to contact that buyer, and I had to ask him, is there any way that we can cancel this order? I explained to him that this was my fault. I messed up on it. No fault of your own. And he was gracious enough to allow me to cancel that order, but that was all my fault. And so I definitely want to give you guys some caution. Be careful when you are. I'm going to go over it a little bit later in the presentation, just as one of my tips, but those are some mistakes that I make. I don't want you to repeat those mistakes. Please learn from me. So let's also look at some of the shipping options that are available for us. So the two primary ones that we like to look at, eBay International Standard Delivery, which is the option that I use and that I prefer. And so with this one, you have a little bit more competitive pricing. So whereas with GSP, the price that's shown to the buyer is the fixed amount from eBay, with EISD, it's a little different because now I'm in control of the prices for the buyer. And so it's a little bit more competitive. It's a delivery duties unpaid option, which means that the customs, the taxes, that isn't going to be paid at the time of checkout. Instead, it may be paid at the time of delivery. Okay, it may be paid at the time of delivery. Still got the seller and the shipping protections. So if something is late, something isn't going to arrive on time, no problem. eBay steps in, they help you out, everything's good. The global shipping program is a DDP option, which is a delivered duties paid option. So what that means is that your buyer, at the time of checkout, they will pay for like the customs and the taxes. Like they'll see that at the time of checkout. And so also with the GSP program, they're always going to be shown whatever price that eBay wants to charge for shipping. So, but on the other hand, there's a lot of convenience that comes along with the global shipping program, because for us as sellers, all we literally have to do is get that item packaged up, sent to Kentucky, and we wash our hands of it. So there's a lot of convenience surrounding that option, the global shipping program, and it's really a great way to get started. It's kind of like an entry way into shipping, and that's what I did. That was the program I initially joined, was the global shipping program. Worked great. There's shipping protection, so if something is late, eBay is going to back you. If the buyer has some type of issues, eBay is going to step in and help you out. And not only that, but you can get your products to over 100 countries, and it's pretty expedited. So the global shipping program, great program to be a part of. And like I said, eBay is going to back you on that, which is very, very important. Okay, let's move on to some of the sellers and the buyers that I've actually gotten to talk to throughout this whole process. From talking to some of the buyers, what I gathered from them is that if you have the GSP program, this is just from them, that they sometimes don't like to purchase just because of the price that they would see in there. So I've talked to several buyers that have asked me, hey, is there any way you can ship this with a different program? But then on the other hand, I've also had some buyers who didn't want to use the EISD and they wanted to go the GS program. So it's all just a matter of preference and all just a matter of what works best for that buyer, okay? When talking to sellers, I found this very, very interesting, but a majority of the sellers that I spoke with actually prefer the global shipping program. I mean, it was very, very overwhelming, the amount of people that I saw that actually prefer to go that route. And I'm thinking that because they like the convenience of it and because they can kind of ship it and forget it. But either way, I mean, it just seems to be the best way to go about doing it. And so I actually spoke with one gentleman. I believe he has an automotive store, and he actually likes to use the eBay International Standard Delivery. And he was the only other person outside of myself that I've actually talked to that uses that. And his story was very similar to mine. He was enrolled in the GSP program and wasn't really making a whole lot of sales. And so he was looking for a way to boost that and try to make his presence known globally. And so he enrolls in the EISD, and shortly after that, his sales start to explode internationally. And so ever since then, his sales have just increased, and regularly he's having sales online. And that's, like I said, that's my story as well, because I was enrolled in the GSP program, great starter program, but I just wasn't seeing those sales. And like I mentioned earlier, I had to convince my wife in order to go full time. And so if I'm gonna go full time, I gotta have a full time income coming in. And so I knew that internationally it has to work. And so when I had GSP, just wasn't seeing any sales. When I enrolled in EISD, I started to see a huge increase in the amount of sales that I was getting every single day. Getting them to Canada, getting them to Israel. I mean, I was like, man, this is absolutely amazing. This is what eBay is all about, being able to buy and sell, being able to do this globally. And so I actually prefer EISD. It's been and done wonders for my eBay business. A lot of people don't think that there are protections around it, but there actually are protections around it. And so, like for instance, right now, I just shipped out, well, I won't say I just shipped out, but probably last month I shipped out an order to Canada. And the guy had ordered 3 different items from me at that time. 2 of the items made it. 1 of the items didn't make it. And so we've been dialoguing. And guess what? That is not going to be, like, it's not going to hurt any of my metrics, not going to hurt any of my feedback. Okay, I'm not going to be out of any money. Like, eBay steps in, helps you out, and that's what I love about it, is that I'm able to run my business freely, and I'm able to do so with eBay having my back. So I want to give you guys some tips, okay? And okay, so here's probably one of the most important tips, and I wish I would have paid attention to this early on. Okay, double and triple check the listing for accuracy, for the size, for the gender, and for the color. Okay, so when you're creating your listings, you need to make sure that your title is correct. Okay, if it's a men's shirt, it needs to say men's shirt. Okay, if it's a size large, it needs to say size large in there. If the color is blue, it needs to say blue in there as well. Because here's the deal. If you're going to ship that item overseas, if you're going to ship it globally, I mean, it has to be accurate, because you don't want that item coming back to you. Okay, because if you're, like, the shipping is going to be a whole lot more. It's just a lot more at stake whenever you're shipping internationally. So you have to be very, very careful with that. And then also, you want to make sure that the package is secure and well taped for transit. Okay, these mail carriers, sometimes, you know, they drop stuff. Sometimes stuff gets, you know, knocked up against something else. And last thing you want is for your item not to arrive. Or last thing you want is for your item to arrive damaged. Because they are going overseas, because they are going internationally, like, their transit time is going to be a lot longer. And so it's very, very important that you securely package these items up so that they can survive that trip, okay? And then also you want to ensure that the label is affixed properly, okay? Because sometimes if that label is coming off, or sometimes if it's not on there correctly, they can't see it, they can't get a good scan, then it hurts, okay? Because they're not going to be able to find it. It may delay things, and so thankfully I haven't had any packages that I've shipped internationally that have gotten lost. I think there was this one time where there was a package that was out there for a very, very long time, contacted eBay, tried to figure out what was going on. They ended up finding the package, and so they were able to ship it out to the customer. It arrived later than expected, but again, there was some seller protections in there, so it was no problem for me. And then also, this is important. This is very, very important. You want to accurately list the weight and the dimensions of the item. So as I mentioned earlier, with those Nike shoes, the reason why that price went up so much is because I didn't have the accurate weight in there, okay? Like instead of it saying 1 pound, which wasn't correct, the shoes were actually like 5 pounds, okay? And that's what drove the price up. And so, it increased that price dramatically. And so the last thing you want to do is, create a listing that isn't accurate, because basically it's almost like a false advertisement for that buyer. They think they're having to pay this amount, right, for the shoe or for the shirt, when in reality, they're going to have to pay this much. And so it's our responsibility as sellers to, provide the best possible service for, these buyers. And these are just a few of the tips that I've learned. If you have any tips, please, feel free to let us know. But these are just some of the ones that I've, kind of learned through Hard Knocks. And, I try not to repeat these anymore. But I think the biggest thing for me is learning to just slow down whenever I am doing my listings, because, sometimes I don't really take into account, that this item may get purchased by an international buyer. And there's been times where I've been caught slipping because, I didn't go down and try to put the weight in there, or, maybe the size was off. So like, I cannot stress it enough. Triple check it, double check it. Make sure that you are putting together a good listing, because after all, if they're going to be, far away, they can't touch the item. They can't hold the item. So the item needs to be accurate in this listing. Okay. And then also, I want to leave you guys with some key takeaways. And the first one is this: there is a global demand for your products. Okay. If you sell in the clothing category, there's a global demand. If you sell toys, plush items, there is a global demand for your products, okay? And so there is somebody in Australia that wants exactly what you have. There's someone in Japan who wants exactly what you have. And the only way they're gonna be able to get that is if you offer international shipping. And so my advice, my takeaway is please, please understand that there's a global demand for your products, okay? Number two, you have seller protections whenever you are using the global shipping program. And when you're using eBay International Standard Delivery, they will protect you. They will step in and they will help you, okay? So you don't have to think that you're in this alone. Don't have to be overwhelmed. They're gonna help you out every step of the way. I know this for a fact because they help me out all the time, okay? And then there aren't any special skills required to ship internationally, okay? I don't have a background in shipping internationally. I didn't have any experience doing this. This is something that I learned from a YouTube video, very, very well thought out, well-informed YouTube video. And so you guys are getting that same opportunity to just get a really good understanding, but it doesn't require anything different. So the same way that I ship out my normal packages is the same way that I ship out my packages for my international orders. It all routes the same exact way. So I'm not having to go out of my way to another post office, not having to ship to a completely different location. Everything is completely easy, and eBay has made it that way so that we can have a good experience on the platform. And then lastly, here's the last one. Okay, so you can grow your sales and make money worldwide. I am a living testament to that. I've talked to some other resellers that use the programs, and they can't say enough good things about the programs as well. So understand that, guys. You can make money, you can make sales worldwide, internationally. It's a great opportunity for you. Please go sign up and let's see how much you can increase your sales. I appreciate your time. I can't wait to connect with you. Have a good one.